Listeners of Afri-Radio, good afternoon and welcome to yet another brand new thing. We're coming your way. Codes of Africell, the Gambia's biggest GSM service provider. Musa Sise is my name. This I call the hour because it's a rare moment in which we have in our midst, and of course in a very good company this afternoon, and probably by hearing his little intro and bio, we'll be impressed as to in whose company I am this afternoon. The gentleman I am about to talk to is called Dr. Peter Baofu, and who is an author of 102 theories and 122 scholarly books as from August 2017, and numerous and provide clear vision on the conventional wisdom in all fields of knowledge. He's a gentleman who has his acquired or received his PhD in political science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Dr. Baofu, and an entry into the list of prominent and emerging writers in contemporary authors, and as a U.S. Fulbright scholar in the Far East. He had taught as a professor at different universities in Europe, the Middle East, America. He finished more than 5 academic degrees, including a PhD in political science from MIT, and was a summa cum laude graduate. Let me welcome this immense landed gentleman. Peter, welcome to Afri-Radio.
Thank you for inviting me.
How do you feel being here and being talked about in this manner?
I feel great to have the opportunity to talk to you about these different visions of mine in my publications and my travels.
Does it make you feel humble? Because academics today is as big as the world it is. But do you count yourself as a lucky somebody, or as just a hard worker or a determined individual?
I think that there's a combination of all of them and something else too. It's very lucky for me. I think it's a privilege for me to be able to travel to more and to live in so many of them and try to understand life from a different perspective all over the world. So that is, I think, is a privilege. But of course, there's also a question of hard work too that I have been doing to engage in a massive project to understand humanity in that sense.
Okay. Peter, thank you very much for sharing that little bit with us. Did you propose and defend these theories?
And let me give you 1 or 2 examples about my vision so that you can understand better what I'm trying to do. For example, one of the major beliefs in our time is that democracy is the best political system. Everyone wants to be democratic. I am predicting that democracy will not last.
Okay.
Democracy will be replaced by what I originally called post-democracy, a new political system in the future. And I propose different versions of that about the future. This is a prediction, not an advocation, by the way. I'm not like people who are Karl Marx or Jesus Christ and all that. They advocate something and say, this is good for you. I'm not saying that. I'm just predicting that what the future is going to be. My prediction can be incorrect or correct part of the way.
I want to take you beyond that, because don't be another Nostradamus in here. If you think that you are coining out a new system of government that might come, and you believe that it's much better for humans, much more than the acclaimed democracy, I think you should be able to go a little bit deeper in telling us what is the system and how can it function. Because Marx came with Marxism, and of course we all know what it is that it has ended up. And but still there are remnants of Marxists who still believe that is the best way forward.
I think that's a very good question. Marx, by the way, is more on economics than on political science. But in economics, I also have another theory too. This time it's about economics. I also predict that capitalism will not survive. It will be replaced by what I called post-capitalism. Now, if you ask about what are the fundamental aspects of all of this, let me give you some example. Look at democracy as a good example. A lot of things about democracy are functional. I think that's fine. But there are also a lot of problems about that. For example, in the U.S. nowadays, is where I'm from, we have a lot of different problems, not just about the problem by Trump and all these people, but also because nowadays there is reverse racism, reverse sexism, reverse classism, for example. And let me give you just one example. This is a very very controversial issue here is that in America, race issue is a very sensitive one.
Absolutely.
Gender issue and sex issue is also very sensitive. And when you engage in a rational debate with someone, sooner or later, if the person doesn't agree with you, they will call your name.
They will label you.
Yeah, they will label you. You are racist, you are sexist, and that's the end of the conversation. We don't have this kind of rational conversation, and I don't think that that is a very effective way to solving problem, and that's why this kind of problem continue to our time. And right now we have all this kind of problem in America under Trump. Is just another good example. The problem doesn't go away.
It doesn't go.
It continues.
Are you suggesting a political immaturity by the players or what? Because if there is maturity in politics, these are issues that you should be able to talk about.
Yes, it is a question, of course, about political maturity, but I think there's more than just a question of political maturity. I think the deeper problem, the deeper root of the problem is about the nature of the political system. It's about, in this case, about the democratic system.
So those are the weaknesses of the democracy that we're talking about.
Yes, that is part of the weakness of democracy, but that's also part of the fundamental tension. One of the things that people often misunderstood when I propose something like this is for them to assume that I think that post-democracy or post-capitalism are superior than capitalism and democracy. That's not quite what I say. What I'm proposing is that it's relative. It's historically relative. Each age has a certain political and economic ideology that they believe in, and it can benefit, it can suit them better in the age. But when the age is developing in a different era altogether, there will be new social conditions, new culture, new society, new environment, such that a new economic and political system will become necessary. So in that sense, they change. They change because they fit in better with the situation in a new era. So that is what I mean. Now, going back to the question about Marx or some other people that you mentioned, will they go away? I think they will go away, but they will not be one versions only. They are different versions, and these different versions will be competing with each other. Just as nowadays in democracy, we have different versions of democracy. American democracy, European democracy, Chinese democracy, and all that. And each of them think that the other one is not democratic.
Enough.
See, the American one think that the Chinese one is dictatorial, is not democratic, and the Chinese one think that the American is like pseudo-democratic.
Pseudo-democratic.
So each one will say the other one is bad, mine is good. Believe in mine, do not believe in theirs. So the same about what I call post-capitalism. There are different versions. The same thing too nowadays. You have market capitalism, you have state-sponsored capitalism or command market economy and all that, and each of them is telling you that there is better. But I'm saying that it's relative to the situation and the environment in the country or society at the time.
Okay.
So there is no one universal version that is good for everyone, but each version will be fighting and competing with each other, as they have been doing now. But in the future, the post-democratic forces and the post-capitalistic forces, they will be competing with each other too. And I predict that.
And I mean, as predicted, it is even existing right now, because if you look at all the democracies that we live under, whether it's in Africa, in Europe, or wherever in America, for example, Chinese democracy, and of course, Saudi Arabian democracy, I mean, none of them are the same. But here we are, relatively speaking, you suggesting that each of these will eat each other up depending on how much support is being played out in this global media.
Yeah, this is true about everything in life. Think about a classroom when you have a lot of students taking a class. Some students are going to do very well. Some other students are going to do very poorly. The same thing about different versions of post-democracy and post-capitalism. They have different versions. I talk about some of them in my publications, in my books. But some of them will be much better than the other in terms of competitive. For example, you ask me, if there's some right now already, there are some signs that they're already developing right now. And I propose some of them. For example, the one by China is a good example. China now is the emerging superpower. In terms of the GMP, PPP, purchasing power parity, the Chinese economy was already the largest economy in the world in 2014, 3 years ago.
Yes,
Now, in America, we don't like that because we don't like China to replace the U.S. at number one. So
Absolutely.
we continue to use the nominal exchange rate of understanding GMP, but that's very misleading because that's about speculation on trade. But in terms of production, the PPP is a much better approximation. So, but there is a very important implication that whatever they do in their country will shape the future civilization. Another one in India, for example, I also talk about the role of women and how they will shape the future movement of human civilization. Because now as they participate more and more in the labor force, they have more to say. Now they are dictating the feminist way of understanding. Even if you watch a lot of films, programs, TV station, education, and all that in America, for example, in Scandinavia, and you will see more and more they are imposing the feminist viewpoint on everyone else. They become as oppressive as anyone else too. So this is one of the major problems that post-democracy had to resolve. So in the sense, they are much better than the democratic system right now because we are not able to resolve them, but they will.
That's also arguable. But I mean, in some form, we're talking about the inequality, of course, societies, and to start with men itself, the inequalities of men, women, and everything that you believe in creation that's been created, whether it's evolution, and of course societies emerging at different times, blessed with different resources, just as you and I are here talking about. How does this play into your psychological? I think the what you have in your theories in here, before going into the political sciences, the behavior. Beyond human political behavior to post-human political behavior, which you published in 2017.
Yes, that's a good question. Remember, I don't have one theory. I have 103 of them. So now another theory of that 103 is what I call post-humanity. In that theory, I propose that the human race, as we understand now, you, African, me, American or Chinese or Japanese or German, they will not survive anymore. They will disappear in the future. The extinction of the human race. What is going to happen is the emergence of new species, new objects, new kind of intelligent life forms in the universe. And I have proposed many of them. So this is another direction toward the post-human development that I'm talking about. Now, in the case of post-democratic and post-capitalistic development, they can be understood too from the context of the biological evolution. Now, back to another question that you just asked before. There are not just one explanation how come there are inequality between men and women. There are biological reasons, even the feminists, they don't like to talk about them. But there are also cultural reasons and social reasons, environmental reasons, and mental reasons. It's not just only one thing, and you can say, yeah, that is the reason. That's a very simplistic understanding of life. So in the sense, in my publication, I talk about what are the reasons for this emergence. Because as an intellectual, when you think about the future, you have to show evidences. You have to explain to your audience why this happened. So you have to give them the reasons. So in all my publications, no matter which theories, I always propose a comprehensive analysis of all the major reasons, including, let me summarize 4 of them: cultural reason, social reason, environmental reason, and mental reason, which is mostly biological in this sense. So there's not just 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Interesting. How far can you take these arguments? Because depending on who you're talking to, it might be also be defended.
Can you repeat the question?
Depending on who you talking to about the inequalities that you mentioned, because there's no simple factor. It varies. And I think if you want to tell the Chinese or the American, let's suggest the American woman or the American women, you know what, we're equal.
One other thing about intellectual debates in human history is that in many cases, it's not a question of rational conversation. Just like if you believe in God, can you convince someone that you believe in God because you have proven that God exists? For many of them, it's not even relevant. It's a question of faith. So can you convince the feminists or the masculinists or the white supremacists or the black supremacists that what they said is not correct. For example, it's not a question of rational conversation that you can sit together and talk about that. And at the end of the conversation, you say, okay, now we have a rational conclusion. That's what we agree on. And from now on, we are going to behave like that rationally. It doesn't work like that. So what are the reasons for all these conflicts? Again, for the four major reasons that I just mentioned. Some of them are cultural reasons. Some of them are social reasons. Some of them are biological reasons. Some of them are environmental reasons. All of them work together to produce the kind of outcome that I'm proposing. But can you convince someone rationally? It's not a question of rational conversation that you can convince.
Peter,
You cannot convince someone who is a Nazi or a fascist about what they believe or what they do not believe any more than you can convince someone who is a Democrat about what they believe or do not believe or should not believe. It never works like this. Look at the presidential debates in America. Have they ever proved anything? No. It's just rhetorical. In many ways, it has nothing to do with intellectual conversation.
Because if that was the case,
it is contrary to the very ideal of a debate in a democratic system. It is an occasion for you to throw rhetoric, to engage in character assassination, to all kind of tricks that you can to make your opponent look very bad. It's not a question of let's sit and talk about reason, evidences, and it doesn't work like this in life, unfortunately.
it's good to have you talking to us, and I know I would love to have you towards
Africa, all the best about the future. I have written about them too. I think that they have a future, but on the other hand, there are also a lot of problems that they have to confront, but that's true about everyone on earth. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
In Afri-Radio, and also I wish Africa all the best.
Thank you so much, Peter. There was, I call him a polymath because I think he is, anyone like him should be a polymath. That was Dr. Peter Baofu, an author of 3 new theories and 122 scholarly books, all different fields, talking to us here on Afri-Radio. Musa Sise is my name, and on behalf of AfriCell and everyone here in Afri-Radio, I want to wish you all a very, very pleasant day. Thank you so much for being with us.